Again, welcome to our NCAA Eligibility Center webinar this afternoon. This is NISCA. This is from our NISCA webinar series. We'll get started in a few minutes. You can see that we'd like for you to mute your audio. If you have any questions, submit them in the chat box. We're recording the webinar, and we're going to follow up with an email with a link to the slides, recording, handouts, and a certificate of attendance if you're indeed here today. Here's our slide that we have to put on the slides. And these are our presenters today from NCAA. We have Kaylin Overway. She's Assistant Director for High School Review. Kaylin is a member of the team responsible for the review of high school accounts and programs according to NCAA legislation and has been with the NCAA since 2018. Kaylin is a former high school teacher and holds a BS in secondary ed and an MS in school counseling. Yay! Both from Butler University. Matt Harris is Assistant Director of High School Review. Matt has worked for the NCAA since 2014. Matt holds a bachelor's degree in telecommunications art and a master's degree in effective teaching and leadership from Butler University. I'm going to turn it over to Kaylin right now, and looking forward to learning a lot since I worked in the middle school my whole career.
All right, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and start to share my screen so that way. All right, can everybody see that okay? Getting nods, great. All right. So we are super excited to be here today with the New York State School Counselors Association. I always got to make sure that I say that extra S because you all throw that in there. Sometimes some states don't throw that word state in there. So I always have to remember to say that one. And we are just super excited to be here with you all today and hopefully provide you all with some information on best practices for high school counselors when dealing with the NCAA Eligibility Center. Like Robert said, my name is Kaylin Overway, and I was a former English teacher as well as completing my master's in school counseling during the pandemic, actually. So I did all my internship hours, or not all, but half of my internship hours during the pandemic, which was definitely an experience, and hats off to you all for doing it for the entire pandemic and then some. So I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Matt Harris, and he's going to kick us off.
Thank you, Kaylin. I appreciate it. I'm really happy to be here today. My name is Matt Harris, and as Robert alluded to, I've been here at the NCAA National Office for about 10 years now, just a little over 10 years as part of the high school review team. Kaylin and I work alongside each other doing a little bit different kind of work that we're going to get into today. I know it was mentioned at the start, but I want to reiterate that if you have questions as we go through the agenda today, please throw them in the chat and we will do our very best to answer those for you. I will say that the questions that we are able to answer as we go through the presentation are going to be the general questions about the topics that we're covering. If you have specific questions about situations, maybe a specific course or student at your school, we'll do our best to answer those. But of course, we can't get into account specific things here, but we can certainly and will provide resources and get you contact information for folks who can help you out. So we're looking forward to sharing a lot with you today. So we'll get right to it. So we're gonna go over a lot of things here in a little less than an hour. It's a lot of information. The cool thing is everything we talk about is also available at eligibilitycenter.org. We'll have, again, plenty of resources at the end. So if there's something maybe that we go over pretty quickly and maybe seems confusing, please utilize those resources because we want to make sure that we get to everything, but also that you have access to study any of the information that you need. We're going to talk a little bit about what we do at the Eligibility Center, and then the specific work that the team that Kaylin and I work on, the specific work that we do to review schools, programs, down to specific courses. And then Kaylin's going to talk about some best practices for school counselors, just in terms of maintaining your school's account, course list, and those kinds of things. We'll touch on some recruiting and contact best practices, and then again, get to some resources and Q&A at the end. So let's go ahead and get started, and I'll tell you a little bit about who we are and what we do. The Eligibility Center is a unit within the NCAA National Office. We are housed within the national office in downtown Indianapolis. And we really do two things in the Eligibility Center. We do a lot of work, but it's really toward two things. And that is the certification of college-bound student athletes. And we review academic requirements and amateurism requirements. We may touch on some of those amateurism requirements at the end, but for our purposes today, we're gonna mostly focus on the academic requirements and making sure we are helping you take the correct steps to make sure you're helping student athletes to navigate the process. So I touched on it a bit ago. The unit that Kaylin and I work on is called High School Review, and we are a small team, mostly of former teachers. I'm actually one of two who's not a former teacher. I did get a master's degree in education, but my background is actually in radio and television. But we are a group of folks who have a pretty good knowledge of the secondary and post-secondary space. And again, we have former school counselors, teachers, and again, folks who have served as coaches, and also folks who have served as student athletes and have navigated this process, and so have seen it from both sides. And the specific work that we do is we look at individual high schools, at programs offered by those high schools, and then more specifically, the courses to determine essentially what counts toward NCAA initial eligibility. And we're going to talk now about kind of how we do those reviews and what we're looking for. So there are a lot of initial eligibility requirements. We don't have to read those to you. Some of you are probably quite familiar with them, but if not, I encourage you to use the QR code on your screen. Again, everything else, it's also available at eligibilitycenter.org. But when we talk about the specific legislation and the specific core course requirements, there are a lot of nuances and details that we could spend hours talking about, but those are all available for you. And so I encourage you to use that QR code below to take a look at those at your leisure. All right, so I mentioned we review programs and we review core courses. So I want to talk a little bit about what that is, so you can maybe have a good understanding of the kind of work that we do. So core courses, this is the area that I work in. I'm on a team of people who review the courses that are submitted by over 40,000 high schools in the United States, in Canada, and actually in countries all over the world. But we're going to talk about domestic specific here. So in the United States, we have over 40,000 high schools that have NCAA accounts. And each one of those high schools or districts is responsible for maintaining their core course list. So when a high school submits 1 or 100 courses, the team that I am on has to review those to determine, does it count? And what we're looking for is, does it meet all of the requirements? So the NCAA core course legislation, specifically, is the course considered four-year college preparatory? Is the course considered at or above a high school's regular academic level? And then, does it fit into one of the subject areas you see on your screen? So English, math at the Algebra 1 level or higher, science, social studies, world language, comparative religion, or philosophy. So the course needs to earn graduation credit in one of those subject areas, and it has to be considered four-year college preparatory and be taught at or above the regular academic level. So when we talk about the types of reviews, there are a lot of steps in this process. When a high school first goes through the process of being reviewed by the staff at the Eligibility Center, so the work that Kaylin's team does and that she'll get into a little more detail, they are ready to submit courses for the very first time. The first time a high school submits courses, there's a little bit more scrutiny just to make sure that what the high school is submitting aligns with the documents they've provided during that review process. Specifically, when it comes to core courses, we're looking at the course catalog descriptions. So part of the review process when a school wants to have an NCAA account is providing a current, accurate course guide that has descriptions for all the courses offered at that high school. The first time a high school submits courses for review, the team that I am on is going to look at that submission. Here are the courses that have been submitted. And then we're going to open up that course guide. And we're going to make sure that the course title that's been submitted is included in that course guide. And that will help a high school establish that core course list. So that way, once that submission is reviewed and the courses have been designated with hopefully an approval, but any kind of outcome, the high school will then have a list of courses that accurately reflects what they are currently teaching. And you can see on the screen that the titles that are submitted need to match the catalog titles and certainly need to match the titles on the transcript. When you start submitting student transcripts, we're going to use those titles that were submitted for review. And if they don't match, that can cause hiccups in a student certification. So it's always a best practice, whether you're submitting courses for the first time or just maintaining your core course list, to make sure that the courses that are on your high school's list match the titles that appear on a high school's transcript. So that's kind of how it works when you're submitting for the first time. Once that list is established, we certainly encourage high schools to keep their list of core courses accurate, updated. So schools can submit updates in terms of adding new courses, archiving old titles, changing a course title so it matches what the course is currently called. I want to note that on the archiving of course titles that are archived, those will show up on your core course list, and they'll be designated as archive titles. That just means that we don't teach that course title anymore, but it will still be used if it was approved and is now archived. It will still be used in student certifications. It's just a way to help organize a high school's list. And then the final type is when schools have to upload core course documents for review. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in just a second. I believe it's on the next slide about why we would need to look at documents for review and how that kind of works. So when a course is submitted, again, whether it's the very first time a high school is submitting a course or whether a high school has had an established list for years and years, every course title is going to get a decision. And on our team, there's actually only two of us. There's me and one of my coworkers who review every single course title. So there's a 50-50 chance that I'm the one reviewing your course title. And I'm going to give it one of three decisions. That course is either going to be approved, not approved, or what we call additional information required, which simply means we're not sure what the content, the rigor of this course is, and we're asking for some information. So a lot of courses that we've looked at over years and years, none of these will be particularly surprising to you. We will approve on the title. So high school submitting a calculus course in math. We're not going to need to see documents for that. We know in general what a calculus course has in it, and that it is certainly at or above a high school's regular academic level, and that it's considered a 4-year college preparatory course. So a course like that's just going to be approved on title alone. So a lot of these typical titles, whether they're part of a regular pathway or an advanced elective like a calculus, those are going to get a decision real quick. And so that's a lot of times you may submit titles and then get a decision right away. And that's because we were able to see that these are common course titles. We don't need to ask for additional information. Conversely, there's going to be some titles that we know are going to get a not approved decision. So titles that maybe based on the title appear to be below the regular academic level. So perhaps you have an Algebra 1 course and you submit the title Fundamentals of Algebra 1. We're probably going to designate that course as not approved, and we'll give it a code that specifically tells you when you look at your list why it wasn't approved, and that code will specifically say taught below the regular academic level. The cool thing is, if a course is not approved for being below the regular academic level, for not being four-year college preparatory, or just not meeting the NCAA core course legislation in some way, you have the ability, if you think it does, that maybe we made a mistake and it does meet the criteria for approval, you have the opportunity to upload documentation that we'll look at, and then we can take a closer look and make a decision. And I mentioned additional information required. So a lot of schools have some really cool electives that maybe have a title that we're just not sure what it is. Or it might have a title that sometimes these courses meet the requirements for approval and sometimes they don't. I'm going to give you a couple of really common examples. Film literature and English. We have specific criteria in our high school review committee's policies and procedures, which is a public document, by the way, that anyone can look up online and read through, about film literature courses. And we're looking for courses that are applying rigorous reading and analysis and writing skills to the topic of film, and maybe looking at a film and the novel that it's based on and comparing and contrasting. Those kind of courses are generally going to be approved, but we're probably going to ask for documentation to make sure it's not simply a course where students are watching movies and writing movie reviews. So those are the kind of things we're looking for. And on the screen, you can see specifically the documentation that we're going to ask for, whether it's an additional information required course or a course that we just said, no, this is not approved. The information on your screen, that's what we want to see. The course description from your high school's course guide, the flow chart of the subject area, that helps us see the level, the specific course outline, so a unit by unit or week by week outline that shows us the topics. And then we generally like to see 3 sample assignments or assessments so we can look at the rigor, the depth of knowledge, and determine whether or not the course should be approved. And once we get that information, we generally are able to make an approved or not approved decision. There are times where we have to go back and ask for more specific information. And we'll be very specific in requesting that. But that in general is enough information to render a decision on a course. So the not approved decision. I mentioned that when a course is not approved, it's assigned a code that tells you why it's not approved. And you can see some examples on your screen there. So these are not an exclusive list, but these are the most common reasons why a course would not be approved. The RC5 course, of course, is deemed doctrinal in nature. So we mentioned comparative religion. So comparative religion courses can be approved. Courses that maybe are religion-based, Bible-based courses that are doctrinal religion, those would not be approved. A course taught below the regular academic level. A course maybe not considered four-year college preparatory. That can be hard to determine based on a course's title, but sometimes a high school's regular level courses will be labeled college prep. So maybe there's a college prep geometry course already approved, and a high school then is submitting regular geometry or fundamentals of geometry. We might say, now wait a second, there's already one that you're telling us is college prep. This one appears to be lower. Again, if that's not the case, you have the opportunity to upload documentation that we'll look at to determine if it meets the core course legislation. And then that RC17 that does not meet core course guidelines, that tends to be applied to a lot of different courses and a lot of different reasons. So maybe the course isn't taught in one of those subject areas we showed on the screen. So it could be really a lot of different things. So broadcast journalism, for example, a course that's about video production and broadcasting submitted in English is probably going to get that RC17 designation and not be approved. But again, those courses can be reviewed with documentation if you choose. So the non-traditional courses, this is an area where Kaylin's team are the experts. But in general, what we would consider a non-traditional course are online courses, distance learning, the hybrid blended. So you have common programs like Edgenuity, Odysseyware, those kinds of things. And we require a separate review of those courses. And there are specific criteria for how those programs need to be structured and those courses need to be taught. And basically, if you have a program that would be considered non-traditional, that you would like to have reviewed and say, hey, we want courses taught via this program to count, you can call the customer service team and initiate that review. And our team, the team Kaylin works on, will specifically review, they'll ask for certain documentation and ask some specific questions about how those programs are administered. And then hopefully the outcome will be that, yes, you can use those courses. And what we would say is that right now, if you have students enrolled in a program that you're using, it's a good idea to go ahead and get it reviewed, just to make sure that when that student completes those courses and transcripts are uploaded, we don't have to kind of ask for it on the back end and slow down that certification process. So some special scenarios. I'm going to wrap up here with a couple of special scenarios that we deal with every day, and then I'll turn it over to Kaylin. So grading scales. If your high school, if your transcripts report letter grades, you don't need to have any kind of grading scale in your high school's account. You can, but it's not required, and we won't ask for it. We will use the letter grades that appear on the transcript. However, if numeric grades are reported on the transcript, we have to have an accurate grading scale on file. If a student transcript were to come in with numeric grades and your high school's NCAA account doesn't have the grading scale on file, we'll have to go in and ask for that, get that added to the account. And again, that just slows the student certification. But you can see on your screen weight. That's a big question we get. We use weight in our courses. Can those be applied? Can that weight be applied for NCAA certification purposes? The answer is yes, with some stipulations. So we will add weight in terms of quality points after the grades have been converted from numeric to letter grades. And we will award 1 quality point max of weight for designated honors and advanced level courses. So honors, pre-IB, IB courses, AP courses. If your high school adds weight in terms of a multiplier on a numeric grade, we will not apply that weight because that weight is already going to appear on the numeric grade on the transcript. But if you do apply weight in terms of quality points, oftentimes it'll be 0.5 units for honors and 1 point for AP courses. We can use that weight, and that will only help students. So we encourage you to contact the Eligibility Center and say, hey, we have this weight. We're going to ask for some information, some documentation showing that policy, and we'll probably also ask the year that it went into effect. Oh, great, Caleb put on the screen. So the email address. So if you need to update your high school's weight or just want to have it added to your high school's account, that email, ec-highschool@ncaa.org, I manage that inbox. I will get that email, and that's where you're going to send that information. So please do that. That will only help your student athletes. And then the pre-9th and dual enrollment courses. Again, when I do these presentations live or webinars, these are probably the most common questions we get. Can pre-9th courses count? And the answer is yes. The 2 most common that we see are going to be Algebra 1 and Spanish 1. But that's certainly not limited. Basically, if a course is taken in middle school for high school graduation credit, here's how you can use it in the student certification. It has to appear on their transcript, and it's okay if it shows that it was taken in 8th grade. We need to see that it received high school graduation credit, and the title has to be on your high school's list of approved core courses. So if Algebra 1 is on your high school's list, and a student takes it in 8th grade and it shows up on that student's transcript with high school graduation credit taken in 8th grade, we will use it. Dual enrollment courses, they can be used in student certifications. There's really 2 ways to think about dual enrollment courses. If the course is taught at your high school and it receives dual credit, you're going to want to submit that course to your high school's list of NCAA courses. If it's taught at your high school by high school teachers, it needs to be on your high school's list. If the course is taught at a college by college professors, it does not need to be on your list of NCAA courses. Those will be used without being on your high school's list, provided that the titles and the courses still meet that criteria for approval. They would still be considered core courses. Last note on there, weight cannot be added for dual enrollment courses. So that is a course weight policy. A lot of high schools do add weight. We will not apply it for dual enrollment courses, only because dual enrollment courses aren't always considered advanced level. So just in general, we won't apply weight to dual enrollment courses. Thank you. That's a lot of information. I'm going to hand it over to Kaylin now to take us the rest of the way.
All right, thanks, Matt. And just a reminder that we are in that chat box, so feel free to continue asking those questions. You all have had some great ones so far. And so Matt's going to monitor that for now, and then hopefully we'll have some time at the end to answer any questions that haven't been answered in the chat. We can answer those out loud. So I want to kind of start into some high school counselor best practices. So the way I'm going to organize this section of the webinar is we're going to start with information for all high school counselors, whether you're the primary and secondary contact on your NCAA's high school account or not. The information that we're going to start with is going to be for everybody. And then we'll get into some specifics for those of you that are primary and secondary contacts for your NCAA high school account. So first, for all high school counselors, I highly encourage you to know which courses that you all are teaching or that are being taught at your schools are approved so that NCAA or prospective student athletes can enroll in those. And then I'm also going to show you how to find those courses if you're not the primary secondary contact, and how you can also tell your students to find those courses. Your list of NCAA approved courses is publicly viewable. So your students and your student athletes and their parents can take a look at that list before they come to you for scheduling, and have an idea of, I'm going to sign up for these classes because I already know they're on the list. So that will hopefully take some weight off of you. One, to double check that those courses are actually on the list because they've already done that for you. And two, it hopefully means that there aren't parents in your office in the summer or early in the school year saying, hey, this course needs to be on the NCAA list, because they're, again, they've already taken a look at that list. So then I have assist students navigating in the recruiting process. And I want to absolutely preface this with, you as school counselors have enough to do. You should not be managing the recruiting process. We have done these presentations before, and we frequently get questions about what can we be doing to help student athletes with the recruiting process. So this is just going to be some very basic information for you all to take and use how you want. But again, just a reminder that you are not in charge of the student athletes recruiting process. But these are just going to be some tips that can help you. Remind students to register with the Eligibility Center, especially if they want to play Division I or Division II. If they want to play in a Division I or at a Division I or Division II school, then they are going to need an NCAA certification account. And if they're playing Division III, then we have an account type for them that you can encourage them to sign up for and receive information, but that's definitely not required for those that are interested at the Division III level. And then finally, remind students to apply to the NCAA schools that are recruiting them. Sometimes they forget that being recruited doesn't mean they've automatically been admitted to the school. They still have to go through that admissions process and apply just like other students. So don't forget to remind them of that the Eligibility Center decision does not mean that they've gotten into the school. We're just one part. All right. So Matt's kind of talked about eligibilitycenter.org a couple of times. So if you go there, your webpage will look something like this. The background picture changes every now and then, but up in the top right-hand corner, it says high school administrators. And it's very counterintuitive for a student to click on that button. And I know in my school counseling program, we were told you are not considered an administrator. You're not disciplinarians, all that kind of thing. So it may even be counterintuitive for you as school counselors to click on the high school administrators button, but that's where you and student athletes should click in order to view that list of NCAA courses. So once you click on that high school administrators button, you'll be taken to the homepage of the NCAA high school portal. From there, again, you can click on list of NCAA courses, and you can do this without signing in. So you don't have to sign in to be a primary or secondary contact. Once you click on list of NCAA courses, it'll take you where you can search for your school. So if they know their NCAA high school code, which is typically your SEEB code, if you have a SEEB code with College Board, it's not always. It just kind of depends on what came first, the SEEB code or your school calling into the Eligibility Center. It just kind of depends. But honestly, when I go this route and I'm just kind of out searching for NCAA information, I typically will search by high school name, city, and state. That's just the way I find is fastest rather than trying to remember what the high school codes are. So from there, then you hit search and you find your school that you're looking for, and you'll scroll down past the demographic information, and that list of NCAA courses is there. This is for you all, if you don't have a high school code login, this is for students to be able to view. This is for parents to be able to view. So they'll be listed based on English and then social science and all of those different content areas that Matt talked about earlier. So that way students can see which courses are already on your school's list. And for those of you that are maybe new to taking over your NCAA schools list, you can take a look at this too and see what needs to be added. Maybe that your list hasn't been updated in a while and you know that you're missing some courses. Take a look and see what's there and what's not, and see what needs to be added. And then that, like Matt said, his team will go ahead and process those. All right, so like I said, we're going to touch a little bit on the recruiting stuff. One question that we get asked is, what does it mean to be recruited? If any of these things up on the screen are happening, then those could be considered your student is being recruited. So if they're getting calls from coaches or any kind of messaging, whether that's social media, if they're getting texts or emails, you might have college coaches in your high schools, or they might be having students visit them on campus. If they're issuing a national letter of intent or they're writing a financial aid offer, all of those mean that the student athlete is being recruited. And we will highlight that recruiting typically begins as early as freshman year, but in most cases will start before junior year. So that's the typical timeline. Every now and then you have some students that are maybe late recruit, but that's okay. But typically it'll start after or as early as freshman year, but typically before junior year. And then one question we get asked a lot about is on the recruiting calendars. And there is a link because those recruiting calendars depends based on division and sport that they're interested in. So you take a look at your students' potential recruiting calendar based on what division they're interested in, what sport they're interested in, but they all pretty much have these same four types of periods: contact periods, evaluation periods, quiet periods, and dead periods. So the reason that we give these definitions is just so that you, if you have a student athlete who's really trying to reach out to coaches, they're trying to build that relationship with them, and they really want the coach to come and visit and watch them play. Well, make sure that they're sending that email asking them to come play when they're not in a dead period on the recruiting calendar, because then coaches aren't allowed to watch the student athlete compete. So the reason that we're just highlighting these things is so that you have a better understanding of what these things mean if you're looking at that recruiting calendar with a student, and you can kind of help them navigate those waters and draft that email to the coach at the right time to make sure that they are able to come and watch them, or if it's an evaluation period, that they might be able to come and visit the school, and just the different nuances of the different types of periods. But yes, again, they vary by division and sport, but all of those calendars are linked there. All right. And then we also get questions about what's the difference between an official visit and an unofficial visit. So an official visit is when the NCAA institution pays for the student to visit the campus. So in order to go on an official visit at a Division I or Division II school, they need to register for an Eligibility Center account. If a student athlete wants to visit a go on an official visit to a Division I school, they have to have an academic and amateurism certification account. And we'll talk about the different account types momentarily. If a student is interested in going on an official visit to a Division II school, they can have either a profile page or an academic and amateurism certification account. Then, and also to go on that official visit, students have to be on an institutional request list, and that's not anything that you have to worry about. That's the school basically putting them on a list saying, yes, we're recruiting them. And the biggest piece for you all, if you're the primary or secondary contact, is that in order to go on that official visit, students have to have a high school transcript on file and uploaded to their Eligibility Center account. So again, we'll be able to we'll walk you through that, or we'll give you a resource that will walk you through that. We'll give you just a quick snippet of where that is on the high school portal, and then we'll also provide a link to a resource that will walk you through step-by-step how to upload transcripts. And then unofficial visits are when the student and the family pay to go to that college. All right, this is one of my favorite slides. So this is questions to ask NCAA coaches. So feel free, print this off, give this to your student athletes as they're going on visits or as they're emailing coaches, because these are some great options for questions to ask the NCAA coach. And I always like to remind the students and tell the school counselors, don't just tell the students to ask this of the head coach. If they are on a team sport, ask their position coach. So if they're a pitcher for baseball or softball, ask the pitching coach these same questions. So ask this of the head coach, ask this of the position coach. If they're on any other sports, ask this of the assistant coach. And then also ask this of current student athletes that are participating on those teams. Because you want to really make sure and get a good idea of what's happening on campus and if that's a good fit for the student athlete. So if they're asking the questions and they're getting pretty similar answers from coaches and student athletes and making sure that everything really fits together cohesively, that's a great way to tell if the student's going to fit in that program. So yeah, these are all questions that are great for coaches, assistant coaches, as well as current student athletes. All right, and then some recruiting best practices: encourage your student to talk with their support system, and that may include you, about what level of competition they think the student should aim for. So we often will hear about kind of this Division I bust mentality. And we know that you as school counselors are really helping students find the best fit for them academically and athletically. And so we're here to say that we are on your side and we want that for your student athletes as well. That sometimes the Division I isn't the right fit for a student, whether that's because of playing time or whether that's because of location or majors offered at the school. It could be for a variety of reasons, but really encourage them to find the best fit for them academically, athletically, financially, all of those things. Remind them to check their email often for eligibility center tasks. I know when I was teaching, I had to remind my students to check their email at least once a day, just to keep things kind of moving along and making sure that they weren't missing anything from their teachers or from work or from wherever. So that's a good just habit, is making sure that they're checking their email. We have this link to an interactive map. So if you've got some students who are just kind of starting out this journey of trying to figure out what the best place is for them, this interactive map will help them kind of look, how far away from home do I want to get? How close to home do I want to be? What majors are offered, where's the closest Division I, where's the closest Division II, where's the closest Division III. So that map can help them kind of navigate that process, and then also look into the admissions requirements. And then we've already talked about recruiting periods, but that's just another great thing for them, for you all to kind of talk about as they are going through the recruiting process. And then we talked about emails could be considered a way to get recruited. Encourage them to email their coaches during contact periods to share achievements. And when they're emailing coaches, this is kind of the best practice that we say to include. So have the student's name on that email. When they create an NCAA account, they'll get a 10-digit code, and include that NCAA ID code, because that'll help the coaches be able to find them in our system a little bit faster. Their graduation year, so say they're a senior this year, they would be June 2024. And they'd be enrolling in season 24-25. So that enrollment year is that first year that they would be on that college or university's campus. Remind them if it's possible to take those official and unofficial visits, and then encourage them to conduct themselves in a positive manner in every aspect. And I know you all as school counselors are already doing that. I think I say that at any time I present to the counselors, and then I get a bunch of nods because they're like, yep, we already are trying to encourage that. So we are with you on that and including that as best practices for them. So we've talked a little bit about these account types. So we're going to start with the one here on the left, which is the free profile page. So this is the great one to start with. If a student doesn't know what division they want to play, they don't even know maybe if they for sure want to play at the NCAA level, or maybe they know they want to play at a Division III school. Any of those things, if they know they want to play at a Division III school and they've only attended high school in the United States, this is the account type they would want. So it's free, it stays free. And this is kind of this is what's required if they want to go on an official visit to a Division II school. And then again, if it's a Division III school, they wouldn't have to register for it, but they can. And what this profile page does is it sets them up getting emails from the Eligibility Center, whether it's information about the initial eligibility requirements. There is also information about just time management and how to manage that as a student athlete when you get onto campus. So it's just information like that. And then this is also the kind of account type that they would need potentially if they want to register for an NCAA certified non-scholastic basketball event. Again, it's free, and then it can be transitioned from that free profile page to an academic and amateurism certification at any point. So if you have a student who isn't sure if they want to play Division II or Division I or Division II, they can create that free profile page. And then if they decide, yes, I do want to play at those division levels, then they can change it. And they keep that same NCAA ID code. So those coaches that they've been talking to with the profile page account, they keep that number and they can continue to use that number once they've transitioned onto the certification account. So then account type number 2 is amateurism or academic and amateurism certification account. So that is required to compete at a Division I or Division II school. It's required to go on official visits for Division I school. It's required to sign a national letter of intent, and it's required to receive an athletics scholarship because Division I and Division II are the only divisions that offer athletics scholarships. There is a registration fee associated with this, and for domestic students, it's $100, and for international students, it's $160. And we do have fee waivers available. And we will, I'll have a slide with a link to the entire fee waiver criteria, and I think it's 2 slides from now. And then the last type that I'm going to touch on, or the last account type that there is the amateurism only certification account. So it's required for international student athletes that are planning to compete at a Division III level. And we have that linked because Division III has a unique definition of international students. So if you have some students who have competed or gone to school internationally, I encourage you to check out that definition to see if the student meets the requirement, if they're interested in Division III, and they see if they meet that requirement that they may need this amateurism only certification account. Again, there is, we've got someone off mute, just a heads up.
Bring the ticket form there with money. I'm gonna put everyone's phone and Bob.
There's a registration fee of $70. Again, the fee waivers work for that one as well. And then this might also be the account type if you have student athletes who are transferring from a 2-year school, so a junior college or community college, to an NCAA Division I or Division II school. This hopefully isn't back in your wheelhouse, and hopefully that would be between the junior college and the compliance officer at the university. But we keep that in there just so that you're aware. All right. As promised, the fee waiver criteria, again, these slides are going to be sent. Every link is going to be clickable. The fee waiver criteria would be a lot of words on one slide, but it's includes free and reduced lunch. It includes if they get a waiver on the ACT, SAT, and things of that nature. And like I said, I don't want to take the time to read the entire slide. It would be way too many words on one slide. So these slides will be sent to you. Every link will be clickable, and that link will take you to the entirety of the fee waiver criteria. All right, college admissions apply and be accepted to the NCAA school of their choosing. We've talked about that. They still have to apply. They still have to get in. I have had students that get a little bit confused by that fact because they think, well, I'm an NCAA qualifier, so that's all I need, right? And you have to tell them, no, you actually need to still apply and do all that. And then the college admissions is where they'll go to talk about cost of attendance, financial aid, and then standardized test scores. If any of you pulled up that initial eligibility requirements that Matt showed the QR code for, and for those of you who aren't aware, we actually don't require the standardized test score as part of the initial eligibility requirements anymore. That was paused during the COVID pandemic and then actually removed in the, I want to say 2023, at the 2023 convention. So standardized test scores are not a part of the NCAA initial eligibility requirements, but they may still be required for college admissions or admissions into certain majors or scholarships. So we encourage you and your students to look into that to make sure that they are meeting any standardized test score requirements that aren't required by us, but are required by the school. All right, so that was a lot for all school counselors. Sorry, I just saw something pop in the chat. So no more sliding scales, correct? No more sliding scales. So primary and secondary contacts. So for those of you that are managing that NCAA account, your responsibilities are keeping your core course list updated that Matt talked about, and reviewing the high school review policies and procedures. So this is that document that Matt talked about with all of the criteria for review that our team does when they're reviewing core courses. So if you click on this link and go to Appendix A, it's actually the only appendix there. You'll be able to see the courses broken down by content area, and in some cases, very specific courses. So if you're looking at a geometry course, and it'll be broken down by what's sufficient for approval, and then what's not alone for sufficient, what's not alone sufficient for approval. So that appendix is a great document to just have to make sure that when you are submitting those courses, that you know what the NCAA is looking for as far as that criteria for review. Submit non-traditional programs for review: online, distance learning, blended, hybrid, independent study. Like Matt said, if you currently have student athletes in those programs, have them reviewed. If they were reviewed before the pandemic, they stay, and they were reviewed before the pandemic and approved, they stay approved. You don't need to re-get those or like have them re-reviewed. But if you have students not currently enrolled in those programs, we suggest waiting until the fall. We have some changes coming, and so we just suggest waiting to the fall just to make it easier on you all. And then email, like Matt said, about weighted grading scales, EC High School or EC-High School at ncaa.org to submit those weighted grading scales, respond to any open tasks, and upload transcripts and attest to those fee waivers. All right. So account access for new contacts. If you are a new NCAA contact, or you need to change your NCAA contacts for whatever reason, you'll fill out the high school contact change form, and your primary and secondary contacts should have access to curriculum and student records, and also have the bandwidth to have ongoing engagement with the Eligibility Center. And then the high school portal is where you will manage all of those things, the core course list, the submitting of fee waivers, the student reports, all of that. So to manage your core course list, you would submit those course titles, and then we'll review them based on the course content and the rigor of performance tasks and assessments. Again, that high school policies and procedures document is linked there because it is so important, and it is still so helpful. And then update your core course list as often as it makes sense for your school. If you want to upload courses every month, go for it. We have people reviewing it year round constantly. But best practice, we would recommend uploading courses at least once a year, just to make sure that typically in the spring, when you know that what courses are going to be offered for the next academic year. So we would say best practice is at least once a year, but upload it or update it as often as you would like. Don't let we've had one counselor who said that a college person or college coach said they should be updating it constantly. And we said, do whatever is best for you. And I will stand by that for sure. NCAA courses tab is where you would go to see your school's account status, the summary, your grading scale, core course information. So that courses tab is where you would see all of your high school's information. And you can find your school's list of NCAA approved courses. That's where you'll also see if they've been noted, as Matt said, with needing additional information. And again, that additional information isn't a no. It's just we don't know what to do with this course yet. So we just need a little bit more information. It's where you can also archive those titles or submit course documentation for courses that have been designated as not approved. So submit updates to my school's list. That's the tab that you would do to make any changes to that list, whether it's a new title or archiving an old title. You can change the names of courses. Typically, we will see the changes if you are going from like English 1, 2, 3, 4 to a more thematic approach of British lit, American lit, world lit, themes in literature. So if you're changing how your scale is, that's when you can change those course titles. And then you can also add science labs to an existing title. And then the submit pending course documents tab. That's where you would upload when Matt was talking about that course description, the unit by unit or week by week outline of content, the flow chart, and those 3 assignments and assessments. For any of those courses that have been RC8 or RC5, RC11, RC12, any of those. And then the submission portal does close after 60 days. But if you miss the deadline, just resubmit the title and the course will be, or the portal will be reopened for you. And then in your tasks tab, this is where you'll get tasks for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it could be there's a designation on your transcript and we just don't know what it means. So we have to figure out what it means. So we're asking you. Or it could be, hey, there was a change from junior year transcript to senior year transcript, and we have a question about how that change happened because maybe the grade changed or suddenly there's a new course title in junior year that wasn't there before. It could be a variety of reasons. And so we'll ask a question about those things, and that'll pop in your tasks tab. And so you'll review any of those open tasks to complete. If you have any tasks that are old or for a non-traditional program that you don't use anymore, feel free to respond to those with saying like, hey, we don't use this program anymore. Can we just withdraw it? And we can do that for you. And then you'll receive the task emails. I think they send a reminder email weekly. But anytime you have an outstanding task, it could potentially be impacting a student athlete. So we just kind of suggest that you look through and make sure that those tasks are responded to. And we have noticed, and we're working on trying to fix this, but sometimes if you have a bunch of tasks and you respond to the newest one, some of those older ones will get pushed down. So then you might have some open tasks further down on the list. And we're working to get those, anything that's open, to go to the top of the list. But that's IT, and that is not what I do. And I can say that with confidence that I am not an IT person. And student reports. So this is where you'll go for fee waivers, to attest to those fee waivers, or to submit the student transcripts. And this is just a screenshot, excuse me, of that registered students details tab. And I will have 2 links, one that's specifically about how to attest to fee waivers, and then one that's specific to how to upload a transcript. So that way you can kind of walk through those. And I will say that uploading a transcript into the high school portal is definitely the fastest method to get it into your student athlete's account. It takes about 30 minutes. So if you don't immediately see it, that's okay. Give it about 30 minutes and give it until after lunch if you're submitting it in the morning, just to be sure. And then from there, if it's not in there, then you can call our customer service line, because then there might be some kind of technical glitch. But most of the time, it'll be in the student's account within 30 minutes. And it's definitely faster than mailing it or emailing it. That upload feature is definitely the best way. All right, so now we're going to get into some resources. I will start with this very first one, is the Guide for the High School Counselors. And it is absolutely a great place to start, especially if you're a new counselor that has never done any of this before. Feel free to take a look in that document. We update it yearly to make sure that it's always got the most up-to-date things. Then the Guide for the College-Bound Student Athlete. That one's great to give to student athletes so that they can take and be advocates for their own recruiting process, and they can make sure that they are doing what they need to do. So that is basically their entire guide of here's what you as a student athlete should be doing. And you can download that PDF as well. The initial eligibility flyer is a great one because it has all of the eligibility requirements, and it's just a 1-page, stick it up as a flyer on the wall of your office. So then if a kid's just kind of sitting in there waiting, in between periods, or waiting because you had to go run and take care of a crisis and they're in your office, they can kind of be glancing around and they see that initial eligibility and they're like, oh, right, I need to make sure I'm on track for that. We've looked at the high school portal a little bit, but then after that, we've got 5 different links that are all different types of tutorials. So if you are brand new to the high school portal, that first one, the High School Portal Quick Start Guide, is a great place to start. The core course list tutorial, if you are the one that's maintaining your school's core course list, that's a great one to look at, especially if maybe it hasn't been updated in a while. Manage your school's task tutorial, fee waivers and transcripts, as promised. Those links are there. All right. So Matt's been handling questions in the chat, and I'm going to kind of glance through. think all of them have been answered as we've gone through. But I do want to just highlight this short survey. When I say short, I want to say it's 4 to 5 questions long, and 5, I believe, are just like your typical Likert scale of 1 through 5. And this is just, Matt and I do these presentations a lot, and we are trying to make sure that school counselors are getting the information that they want. So if you could take the time to complete the survey, that would be great. I believe the first question is, what state are you in? So that one's not even a Likert scale. So we are really just open to the feedback, and we want to make sure that we're providing you with the information that we want, or that you want. So please take the time to fill out this survey so that we can make sure that you are getting that information. All right. We've got one. Go ahead, Matt.
Kayla, we were, up until just a moment ago, we were caught up on all the questions. There's one about would an athlete need to take additional courses separate from the NCAA eligibility to meet the admission requirements for certain schools? And the answer is they might. It's just like you talked about how you still have to be admitted to the school, even if you've met the NCAA requirements. So depending on the institution, they may require, a certain number of level of math for that major, or they might require a certain number of years of world language, or something that isn't necessarily that you could meet the NCAA requirements without, but the school might. So that's a great point, and that's just another one of those list of questions to ask, because again, the admissions process is completely separate from the eligibility process. So that, I just wanted to clarify that. So that's the answer to that question. And then, Kaylin, somebody's asking about if the SAT is no longer needed, do we still have to have students complete the core course GPA? So yes, it used to be that you had that GPA requirement, that core course GPA requirement of 2.3 for Division I. And depending on your standardized test score, there was a sliding scale. So you might even have to have a higher one. That sliding scale is gone, but there is still that 2.3 GPA requirement for Division I and 2.2 for Division II. So that's still in existence.
All right. So then we also had a question about early academic qualification. So that doesn't come up often in information sessions, but found a resource lately for the portal and wanted to ensure it's still valid. It is. I uploaded a link to our FAQ section on early academic qualifiers. So that for Division I, an early academic qualifier earns a core course GPA of 3.0 or higher in at least 14 of their NCAA approved core courses. And there is a specific breakdown of they have to have a specific number of English, specific number of math, science, and so on. And then Division II is a 2.5 or higher in 14 of those NCAA approved core courses. And again, a specific breakdown of those courses. And then we had another follow-up for early academic qualifiers. Do final test grades need to be equivalent to a 3.0 GPA, or is that just the overall class grade? So that will be, I want to make sure that I understand this question. So do final test grades need to be equivalent to, are you saying like the state test grade, or just their final course GPA, or their final grade in the course? Feel free to throw that in the chat. I don't want to make anybody come off mute if they don't want to. But in the meantime, the final test grade. Okay, so we are looking specifically at the grade that's on the transcript. So that transcript after the junior year. So if that test grade is not included in, and Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but if that test grade is not included in the final course grade, then we wouldn't necessarily look at that. We're looking at the grade in the NCAA approved core course.
Yep. Yeah. Just the final grade. Sometimes, courses will have, whether it's a state test or an end of course exam, and that may be factored in the grade. It may be not, but that part of it is not relevant. All that we want to see is what is the final grade for the course. And I also want to clarify a lot of times students and parents may be confused about this. So this is good information to relay. When we talk about the GPA, that is the core course GPA, which most of you probably know, and probably have some students who have been confused by this before, but your overall GPA that's on your transcript may not be the same as your core course GPA, because we are only looking at the GPA in those NCAA approved courses. So just an important reminder to remind students and parents that the grades that are earned in, fine arts courses and those kind of things, while they may impact the overall student GPA, all of our policies are based on the core course GPA. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned that. And Kaylin, there's a question about district. We have several district accounts. I'll let you field that one if you want, about how
Sure.
they can set that up. But we certainly do have districts who manage accounts for multiple high schools.
Yeah, so our districts, when creating an NCAA district, we will ask a couple of questions about what the functionality of that district is. Do you all share a transcript? Do you all share a transcript and curriculum? Do you all share transcript, curriculum, and a grading scale? So we'll ask those kind of questions, and then you get to pick who you want your district level administrator to be. And I believe, Matt, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you can call into customer service about that, and then you'll get a district. Is it
district information update form?
Thank you.
And actually, that'll actually come from me. So we will ask, like Caitlin said, certain questions, and basically, if you have, we can create a district in any of the scenarios that Caitlin mentioned. If all the schools have a unified curriculum, meaning all of their core course lists would be identical, we can create one account. The schools will still have their individual accounts, but any changes made in the district account would copy across. So the district contact would be the one to maintain the list for all the schools. They would have to maintain one list that would always be copied across all those schools. If it's a district where the transcript is common, but the curriculum may differ, there is still a district account, but each individual school would maintain their own list. Again, I recommend calling customer service. They can kind of walk you through the specifics, and they can guide you as to the next steps if that's something that you're interested in setting up.
The one caveat that I will put in there is, even if your district is unified curriculum, so you all have the same core course list, each individual school will still be responsible for attesting to those fee waivers and uploading student transcripts.
Yeah, good point. Thanks for mentioning that. Yep. So great questions, everybody.
Yeah.
And Kayla, I mentioned while you were finishing up that if there's anything we didn't get to, I know we've kind of run out of time, but please utilize the website and the customer service number. There are really friendly people there that will look up your specific school account. They can talk about specific student issues that in far more detail than we're able to get to. So utilize that. They're great people, and they will help you out. You will get to talk to a real person.
And I just put over here, switch the slides a little bit to give you that customer service line. So that top number is specifically for high schools to contact. So principals, school counselors, whomever within the high school, that line is specifically for you. And then for parents and students, if they have questions, feel free to send them to this phone number. So it's different from you all, but they will also get the answers to their questions that they have. All right. Checking through. All right, we've got one more. How are students informed of their eligibility status? So they'll monitor their account to look to see if it says that there is a final qualifier or final decision. And we are working on making that more clear for students to be able to see, like, hey, you're deficient in this, like you need another English class or you need another math class. We're making some tweaks, and we're trying to make things a little bit more transparent and a little bit easier to follow. And we have also heard through our high school survey that it would be great for school counselors and for those with primary and secondary contacts to be able to also see that information. And so again, Matt and I are not the IT people, but we are pushing that because we know, we hear you, we know that you want it, we know that you would be very helpful for you. So we are pushing that as well. We just don't know how to do it ourselves.
Thank you. You guys have been a great audience. We really appreciate you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Kaylin and Matt. This has been terrific. Learned a lot today. There was one more question. If a student, I think I know the answer, but if a student is accepted into a school, does it basically mean they passed the NCAA clearinghouse?
So
And
yeah,
I
Matt,
actually did. Yeah, I did answer that. Those
Yeah.
are
Oh,
those
I
are
didn't see
not
the
the
answer. I'm
same
sorry.
thing.
Okay.
No, fine. Most of the time they probably will, but they are separate things. So it's important to note that to let students know, make sure you are finding out what the admission requirements are at your college or university, because it's going to differ depending on where you're going. That is completely separate from all the requirements we're talking about today. So Kaylin mentioned students and parents sometimes get confused if they're navigating this for the first time. So yeah, definitely clarify that for them. So thank you, Robert, for bringing that up.
So on behalf of the Professional Development Committee, we'd like to thank Matt and Kaylin. This has been very informative. We too will send out a short survey with a certificate of attendance, links to the PowerPoint, as well as the saved chats for today. We have some upcoming PDs. There's a Counselors of Color Affinity Roundtable next week, or actually tomorrow. There's a Capital Region Trades and Job Fair, and we got a presentation in Q&A on the graduation requirements in a couple of weeks. So again, thanks for your time, and it's great to have you.
Bye.
thank
Bye,
you so
everybody.
much and have a great
Thank
rest of your
you.
evening and week.
Nicely done.